Okay, splendid. Do you need a moment to get something out? I'm sure you're all right.
Yeah,
Splendid.
no, fine.
Came prepared. Right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first panel of the day. Well, my first panel of the day. I'm sure many of you have already been up bright and early to go and attend other panels elsewhere. But welcome to today's panel, which is Delivering the Skills Britain Needs, the role of modern universities, which we're very happy to be doing in conjunction with Million Plus. My name is William Atkinson. I'm the assistant editor of Conservative Home. I'm very pleased today to be joined by the Secretary of State for Education, Gillian Keegan, who's also the MP for Chichester, and I think we can all agree is doing a chuffing good job.
Jolly good.
We're also very pleased to be joined with Graham Bodden, who is the chair of Million Plus, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Central Lancashire, and also chairman of many other things. So I'm sure we'll get into the various myriad roles later on. I'm also very pleased to be joined by Naomi Clayton, who's the Deputy Director of the Learning and Work Institute, and John Coe, who is a counsellor. Is it the executive director, of strategy at UCAS? The tyrant who oversees all of us who've ever had to go through the sort of university application process.
Apologise now.
And now the parliamentary candidate for Esher and Walton. And so the format for today will be, we'll have a selection of 3-minute opening speeches on the general topic from each of our panellists, and then I'll spend 20 to 25 minutes or so asking them questions, then turn it open to the floor. And I mean, obviously the role of universities is central to so much of what we're looking at the moment. Of course, a sort of myriad different elements of the political spectrum. It's essential to everything from levelling up to dealing with regional inequalities to actually preparing us to be the science superpower that the Prime Minister is so keen that we can be. And the government is committed to exploring skills opportunities available to people of all ages, including through the lifelong loan entitlement. But I'm sure there are many other ways that we can touch upon as to what the role universities can play going forward, and whether actually, indeed, we have too many people going to university, or indeed too few. But that is, I'm sure, something that will come up as the event goes along. So without further ado, can I pass it over to the Secretary of State for her opening remarks, please?
Thank you very much, and I am absolutely delighted. This is, I think, my favourite topic of all, to be talking about where business and education need to meet. And it's been something that has been part of my whole career before becoming an MP, before becoming the Secretary of State for Education, which is effectively how you make sure that all those years you spend at school, and then potentially years in further education and potentially years in higher education, lead you to where you want to go and provide you with a whole load of opportunities, as well as providing the country with the skills that they need. There's no doubt, not only post the pandemic, but also when you look at the technological shifts that are ahead of us, that get talked about a lot, AI and quantum, there will be a lot of pressure on skills globally. There already is. If you look at almost any industry in our country that wants to grow, and you talk to them and say, what is it that's holding you back? They'll say, the skills. I need to get the right skills to be able to power my business. And it really is incumbent upon all of us working in education to work much more closely with businesses and organisations to make sure that we're in tune with each other, to make sure that what we're teaching will enable people to go on and be able to develop great careers later on. It's no probably surprised that a lot of the reforms, there's been two big reforms, I would say, that we've done since the Conservatives have been responsible for education since 2010. The first is completely reform our school standards. So there's been a lot of work. A lot of people will be aware of that. We've changed the training, we've changed the curriculum, we've changed the standards, and now we've made sure that more kids go to good and outstanding schools. But the other big thing that we've really focused on is reforming our technical education. There's been various numbers of reviews. There's been a lot of people have tried this over many years. There's been successive initiatives that have been tried and by and large largely failed. And I think the reforms that we've put in place are proving to be successful. And I think they really are built upon a couple of things. The first is the government-sponsored apprenticeship scheme, which is not like the old one where city and guilds, you could get to a trade, etc. But we have really obviously introduced the levy, and as a result of that, built a completely new apprenticeship scheme where now we have 670 standards, 140 of them degree apprenticeship standards, that can take you into almost any career in this country at any age, either straight from school or later on if you want to either change careers or you missed out first time round. Now that is, I think, been a big, profound change, and we now have trained over 5.5 million apprentices. But what that gave us was the underpinning, which was the Institution for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. And that institution has basically mapped with employers, worked with 5,000 employers to basically figure out how we help ensure that the right things are being taught in schools, and that we have that sort of closeness in terms of the education system. So it's also led to T-levels, which are a new qualification which has been developed to have a more technical route from the age of 16. And it's also led us to be able to introduce new things to the skills landscape, which we came up with in the pandemic, actually, which was skills boot camps. In the pandemic, I remember Rishi and myself, he was the Chancellor and I was the Apprenticeship for Minister in Skills. We thought what we'd be left with was millions of people unemployed because of the dislocative impact on labour. Despite furlough, despite all the things that he was putting in place, that was our biggest concern. As it turned out, that was not what we ended up with, but one of the things we did was put together skills boot camps, which are 12 to 16 weeks, all over the country, in anything from cyber, digital, welding, photonics. I mean, they're pretty much everywhere. Any business that had any kind of shortage of skills, we worked with them to put intensive courses together, 12 to 16 weeks, and they've been very successful at enabling people who found them in the job centre. They'd be there and they'd say, I'll go on one of these. They'd completely change their career trajectory, completely change their lives. So they're a new addition, which I think have been fantastic. And the other thing we did in the pandemic was free courses for jobs. So we opened up adult education to about 406 courses. So it wasn't everything, but it was the courses that were mapping to where we had the skills shortages within the country. And I think it's very important to do that. The last thing is to trying to get this higher technical qualification. You mentioned science superpower. To be a science superpower, we will need to have a lot more focus on higher technical qualifications, on institutes of technology and of STEM and science degrees, and also research and that collaboration between business and universities as well. Last thing you mentioned was the lifelong loan entitlement. The final part of this culture change that we're trying to introduce is to not only have brilliant apprenticeship routes to the same destination with a degree, if you need a degree to get to that occupation, included and paid for as part of your apprenticeship, but we're also looking to introduce and will introduce the lifelong learning entitlement. And this is a culture change, because what it will say is everyone in our country can get access to a student loan, the 4-year student loan, at any time, chunked into different pieces. So you don't have to use it all when you're 18, 3 years of it, or even 4 years, because you think you need to do a master's to differentiate from the vast number of people who are competing at graduate level. So that is just going to enable people, and the last thing, I put the apprenticeships on the UCAS system, so people can look and think, oh, you know, I could do a level 4 cybersecurity apprenticeship, and then I can use my loan entitlement to go to university to do something specific in this field later on when I know what I'm solving for, and I know what's going to get me promoted, and I'm in charge of that myself. And obviously the provision that we'll have to build alongside that will be far more flexible, getting back to universities, far more flexible, far more engaged with business, being able to also accommodate people who are working at the same time, and also to you know, be there to attract different cohorts, including adults coming back into the workplace, most of whom will need to work. So the earn-learn route, as we unleash this capability, will even go up naturally, because most people will be earning and then they'll use their loan entitlement to do things whilst they're in work as well, more modularised learning. So that's, I think, and we've done all that in, when you ask what do 13 years of a Conservative government get you, that's one of the things that 13 years of a Conservative. And by the way, none of that existed before. How many apprenticeship standards were there that the government had before? How many degree apprenticeships were there? Zero. This takes time, and this has been this government's investment and taking seriously technical education and reforming it.
Well, that's very splendid to hear. Thank you very much, Secretary of State. It was almost as if we were taking long-term decisions for a brighter future.
We were.
Graham, can I ask for your thoughts, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks, everybody, for coming to the event today to discuss these very important topics, close to my heart, but also close to the heart of Million Plus and the member universities within that. I am, as well as chairing Million Plus, the Vice-Chancellor at the University of Central Lancashire. And William, you mentioned a couple of other chairman roles or chair roles that I take on. I'm also chair of the Maritime Skills Commission, which reports into the DFT and to Maritime UK. And I also chair the University Vocational Awards Council, which is the, if you like, the university sector champion for vocational awards and particularly degree apprenticeships. So it is very close to the work that we all do, and particularly Million Plus universities. And Million Plus has held events at the Conservative Party conference for many years now, including last year's discussion, Staying Local to Go Far, the role for universities in driving regional growth. And we're delighted to be back in Manchester today to continue the open and productive relationship that we have with the Conservative Party around the future of higher education, and in particular at the moment, skills policy and the role that modern universities have to play. And I'd firstly like to thank the Secretary of State for joining us today. As a group, we have been very fortunate to meet and have an excellent working relationship with you and your officials, and I'm looking forward to continuing this relationship as we tackle some of the challenges that we currently face in the skills landscape in this country. It's also great to share a panel with Naomi Clayton and John Cope, who bring a wealth of experience and insight into this area, and I very much look forward to hearing what they have to say to our question and discussion that follow. So as I say at the start, thank you all for coming to this event. The skills agenda is currently very much at the forefront of policy making in England. I know if you look around the fringe events here in Manchester this week, you'll get a sense of the strong appetite for skills discussion across all sectors. And it's pleasing to see that the government is committed, as the Secretary of State has said, to expanding the pathways and opportunities available to people of all ages in skilling and reskilling, including via the lifelong loan entitlement, which of course got royal assent a couple of weeks ago. So this provides an exciting opportunity which modern universities are ready to seize, and indeed arguably have already seized and have led the way in much of this work. Our role as modern universities is at the heart of skills training in Britain, delivering higher education which combines both the academic and the vocational. Just using my own university, the University of Central Lancashire, as an example, we're developing currently micro-credential offer in anticipation of the LLE, and this will strengthen our comprehensive range of undergraduate degrees, our 35 degree apprenticeship programs currently on offer, and our research degrees, all of which are delivering skills which are essential to the local and regional economy. And we refer to a concept of real-world learning, and that refers to a range of activities, but we believe an essential part of real-world learning is that learning is employer-informed and engaged with business, so that our students are as best prepared for the world of work as they can possibly be. So those collaborations with business, that again, that the Secretary of State mentioned at the start, are something which is natural to our universities. Universities generally occupy a unique place in the UK policy landscape, a focus of education policy in themselves, but places where the groundwork for wider economic, scientific and social potential is laid by the development of new skills and innovations and engines of social and economic change in their local area, both as major employers and, of course, as hubs of social activity. Universities, and in particular modern universities, are crucial regional anchors, delivering the skilled workforce needed by industry. And I'm reminded of the Chief Executive of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership saying that it's our types of universities that are particularly driving regional economies and regional economic growth, because it's our students with that upskilling and reskilling process that they're going through, who then go into the local workforce and address directly the challenges of those local areas. The skills gap facing the UK poses a major economic threat. Persistent shortages in key occupations slow growth and hamper public services. Closing these gaps requires expanding access to education that delivers the skills that match labour market needs, but also plan for future skills needs, including modern universities continuing to lead the way in developing degree apprenticeships and more flexible learning options to make earning a qualification achievable for a wider group of learners. And I'm just always mindful of the World Economic Forum listing the major skills needs now and into the immediate future. And if you group them into 4 key categories: problem solving, self-management, working with people, and technology use and development. And clearly, all of those aspects are being addressed within the modern universities. And I know this is something, as we've heard, that both the Secretary of State and the Higher Education Minister are very passionate about. And modern universities continue to lead the way in developing and delivering high-quality degree apprenticeship provision. The way many people think of universities is quite often rooted in their own experiences of them, frequently without having had the opportunity to visit campuses and experience all that they have to offer. Our modern universities offer a variety of courses, often tied to the needs of the local areas and the local economies. However, it is in our vocational and technical offerings and the combination of those that truly sets us apart. And it's our ability to innovate and work with business and industry to meet key local needs. And I could give you a range of examples to demonstrate how we've done that. But just another one from my university, I just want to take dentistry, which is something that we deliver at all levels, which of course is highly skilled but highly vocational. And by setting up regional centres for the delivery of dental education, we are not only upskilling locally, but ensuring that we are addressing the skills shortages in the Northwest region, and many of those who qualify as dentists from the University of Central Lancashire stay highly skilled. They've done more practice than many others who have been in the dental hospital sector because they get more access and exposure to basic dental work, and they then stay in the area and become dentists addressing that critical skills needs. Skills education is not an alternative to university. Universities are critical in providing the skills of the future and must be seen as a critical path of the skills system. So UCLAN supports the wider skills ecosystem through close working relationships with the Lancashire Skills Hub, with our partner further education colleges, and our own wholly owned subsidiary company Training 2000, which has been delivering Department for Education funded skills boot camps aligned directly to the regional priorities around digital skills. So as England seeks new talent to fill its skill gaps, empowering this undervalued skills development engine is key. Modern universities possess unmatched understanding of real-world needs and ability to open new routes to opportunity. And realising their full potential will be essential as the UK navigates the fourth industrial revolution and builds an economy that leaves no one behind. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Graham. And actually, I think I'm in need of a good dentist, so if you could point me in the direction of one of your graduates, it would be incredibly helpful. Anyway, sorry, Naomi, your thoughts?
Great, thank you. And for those of you that don't know Learning and Work Institute, we're a not-for-profit organisation focused on supporting lifelong learning, full employment and social inclusion. And I want to start by talking about the role of universities in supporting a diversity of routes to achieving higher level qualifications at all ages. We know that higher education is increasingly important to work, to economic growth and to levelling up. And the proportion of young people going to university isn't unusual by international standards. But we are unusual in the predominance of full-time undergraduate routes for 18-year-olds, and we need a diversity of routes at all ages. So, for instance, we talked about degree apprenticeship opportunities. How do we widen those opportunities and reduce the inequalities that we see in access to degree level apprenticeships too? So roughly 1 in 5 apprentices, if we look at all apprenticeships, apprentices under 19 come from the most deprived neighbourhoods, and roughly 1 in 5 from the least deprived neighbourhoods. That's not the case when you look at degree level apprenticeships. So 1 in 8 degree level apprentices under 19 come from the most deprived areas, and 1 in 3 from the least deprived areas. When you look at that against kind of degree, first time degree level entrants, that suggests higher levels of inequality. So I think that's something that we need to look at. The UK also suffers from a missing middle in terms of higher education. So just 1 in 10 adults in the UK have a level 4 or 5 qualification as their highest level of qualification, compared to 1 in 5 in Germany and 1 in 3 in Canada. And that lack of qualifications at level 4 and 5 leaves the UK's labour market excessively polarised, and that impacts on social mobility. So people who don't opt to go to university often struggle to progress onto those higher levels of qualification and into those kind of higher skilled, higher paid roles. And clearly, addressing that issue requires universities and other training providers to make sure that there are those links with employers and collaboration between FE and HE. And clearly there's a role for institutes of technology within that. Then I think, obviously, there's the role of universities in supporting lifelong learning. So enabling people to reskill and retrain throughout their working lives. So with more people likely to work a kind of 50-year career now, and big trends kind of impacting on the world of work and the kind of types of skills that people need in work. We need a system that supports people to learn, upskill and change careers throughout their working lives. And when we look at our skills system in the UK, a relatively small share of that is kind of targeted at people in midlife and older. And the lifelong learning entitlement is a very kind of welcome move. It's a good idea. But for many people, and surveys have shown, the idea of taking on kind of more debt can be a barrier to many people. We know that the kind of costs involved in education and training, including the wider costs of kind of training and courses, can be one of the biggest barriers. So we need to kind of consider how we effectively engage and target messaging, particularly at people at different ages, thinking about their kind of motivations for learning and the barriers that they face too. And again, that requires working very closely with employers and having lots of flexible learning opportunities available too. And of course, we need to create ladders of opportunity too. We would like the lifelong learning entitlement extended to encompass entitlements at lower levels of learning and provide extra maintenance costs below level 4. The ladder of opportunity is no good if the rungs only start halfway up. And then my last point is really that universities have an absolutely critical role in increasing demand for skills too. They need to be a kind of central part of the UK's industrial strategy, helping to innovate and support the creation of good jobs, not least so that people aren't having to leave their local areas when they graduate. So, in the 1990s, there was a quite clear shortage of graduates in the north. Now the issue is the shortage of demand for graduates. So quite clearly, universities have a critical role to play in supporting that diversity of routes for all ages, but also in driving up demand for skills too.
It is quite possible to have too much of a good thing from the sounds of it. But thank you very much, Naomi. And then finally, John.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I was going to start by quoting the Royal Commission on Technical Instruction, published back in February. And it started with, the commissioners cannot repeat often enough how impressed they are with the technical knowledge of the masters and managers of industrial establishment on the continent. So talking about Germany and what a brilliant apprenticeship system they look. And the reason why the Secretary of State and her special advisor, I can see, is now looking at their briefing notes going, my God, there was a Royal Commission in February. The reason that they are looking like that is that it was February 1884, and that commission concluded what we have been talking about just now, and actually it's only in the last 10 years that we've actually delivered as a country on the recommendations of that Royal Commission. So when the Secretary of State said what an amazing achievement it was on apprenticeships and degree apprenticeships and all the technical advances, it genuinely was an amazing achievement what's happened in the last 10 years. And I think there has been a quiet revolution, and I say that with some sadness because I don't know why it was such a quiet revolution over the last 10 years of all of the changes that have happened. In the UK now, we are one of the best education systems in the entire world. And we could not have said that 13 years ago. So we have risen up pretty much every single ranking. So we are the best in the West for literacy. You know, and you will all have heard, I'm sure, if you've ever listened to Nick Gibb, the idea of synthetic phonics as the route to literacy. He was maligned and said that this would destroy children's futures and it would destroy the entire education system. And yet his dogged attachment to the proven evidence-based method of literacy has meant that we are now third in the world for literacy. The same goes for maths. We've risen from, I think, about 30th in the world under PISA. We're now 7th and increasing. So there has been an amazing revolution that's happened, and it's no more clear in our apprenticeships just how amazing that is. The amount of funding that's gone into apprenticeships has more than doubled since 2010. The cultural change that has happened as well is just as significant. So, you know, when you look at UCAS's reports, and they often publish a lot of data, they will tell you that about half of people going to UCAS now are interested in doing an apprenticeship. That's an astonishing statistic. That's like 500,000-600,000 people. You know, could you imagine if that was if you'd asked that question 13 years ago? There'd be barely any interest whatsoever. So there's an enormous cultural change that's going on. But at the same time, I think universities, and Million Plus is a really good example of this, of just how we've managed to achieve an amazing approach on apprenticeships, but also kept the world-class universities. Because I started with that quote about how brilliant the German system is, but actually one of the things that the German system is not so good at is their universities. You know, the UK still is one of the second best countries in the world, only behind the US, for its universities. So we're getting to the point now where we can genuinely say we have world-class universities and world-class apprenticeships. And not only are they world-class, they're also incredibly diverse. This is something that the UK's higher education system and Million Plus's members are an amazing example of just how diverse they are. So when I was met with the Open University only yesterday, and they gave me an amazing stat that I just, it doesn't make sense to me anymore. I need to find out more about it. But in my constituency, Esher and Walton, if you ask the question who the biggest provider of higher education is to people there, you wouldn't think that the Open University would be the second. And it just shows you just how the diverse the UK higher education system is, that actually the Open University, that's not spoken about as much as it should be, it's like I think it's one of those hidden gems in the system, is providing an amazing education. And finally, the other bit of good news, and I'll move on to some of the things that we need to improve on, is while delivering that world-class apprenticeship system and a world-class higher education system, at the same time as doing that, we've managed to close the attainment gap. So the amount of the gap between the least advantage and the most disadvantage has shrunk. So if you're on free school meals, your chances of having success are now better than they were in 2010 compared to advantage peers. So I think it's an amazing achievement. But we cannot lose steam and we can't be complacent because it's still not good enough. And I think there's 3 ideas that I want to put forward before we go to questions about areas to improve. So I said the amount of money available for apprenticeships has doubled, and that's fantastic, but it is still not enough. The amount of demand that is out there for apprenticeships, the amount of demand there is out there from employers for education outstrips what it can fund. So I think there needs to be a serious conversation about how do we get more money into apprenticeships. And as a good Conservative, I don't think it should just be the government that's putting out money. I think we need to start thinking a lot more broadly about how do we create tax incentives. So a big achievement for government in research and development. How do you get employers to, businesses to do more research and development? You make it tax effective to do so. So you create tax credits for research and development. Why not apply that to skills and education? Make it so an employer, if they invest £100 into skills, they get £100 less on their tax bill. I mean, I'm making those numbers up, but you get the picture that we should incentivise it. The second area, I think, for improvement, and something where the UK is still an outlier, is in the breadth of curriculum. So it is odd to narrow down the number of subjects you do so much at 16 and so much at 18. And the UK is a real outlier in that. Most other countries around the world, most of the world-class education systems, keep people a lot broader and allow that specialisation to happen a lot later. So when the Prime Minister talks about maths to 18, for me, that's absolutely the right direction. But it's not just maths. It's modern foreign languages, it's science, it's lots of other subjects that it's important that everyone to 18 not necessarily has to have a deep understanding of all those subjects, but maintains a basic understanding and isn't left like me, I dropped maths at 16, never went back, and I regret it. I look at loads of my colleagues who kept going, and they're well ahead of me. So I think broadening that is very important. And then very finally, around adults. So a lot of the conversation that we've spoken about today has been about young people. And I think one of the real problems that we have in the UK is that too many people go into an apprenticeship, do an apprenticeship, or go to university, get their education, go into the workplace, and never return. So I think there's a real conversation is linked to those skills tax credits of how do we incentivise employers to continually invest in their staff, in their employees, to make sure that we get the productivity gains that we need. Thank you.
Splendid. Thank you very much, John. I'm reminded, actually, a German ex-girlfriend of mine used to wax very lyrically about the German education system, and yet she came to university over here, so I always thought that was particularly a gold standard of where we were going right. But talking about where we were going right, it strikes me all of the panel has so far spoken about the success of our higher education sector. But then we're also focusing today on a skills gap and the sort of skills that we need for the future. And so I just wanted, before I turned open to your lovely selves in the audience, if I could ask the panel for their thoughts. Do we fundamentally have too many people going to university? And if not, how should universities adjust their programmes, their curriculum, to meet the needs of the modern workforce? Because I think so often we talk about skills, and skills sounds very good. And I think it sounds like, well, employers want people with skills. Great, let's give them small skills. What are these skills? What are we actually looking for? And how actually, if we're going to have an ever-growing number of people going to university, how can we actually make sure the university is giving them what they need, and we don't end up with a sort of hellic class of overeducated graduates who can't actually provide the skills that the modern economy requires? So, Secretary of State, any thoughts?
I mean, it's really difficult to generalise. I mean, in terms of skills, normally there's sort of technical skills that mean you can do something, if you think about all the things that businesses do and all the things that, the NHS does, or dentistry or whatever, you need to be able to do whatever it is that technically enables you to fulfill that job. There's very few jobs or careers that are not vocational or technical in some nature. There's pretty much very few. Unless you are an academic, that's kind of an exception. Pretty much all of them will have some level of being able to analyse data, being able to put together a budget, being able to work out a supply chain or bring processes together so that you can do whatever it is you need to do. They're all technical things that people need to learn. In terms of the figure. I just think, where it went wrong is somebody setting an arbitrary figure of 50% of kids going to university. I know why you would probably do that, which was to try and sort of, change. It's a big government direction of travel. But, we've actually got that. And as Naomi said, we are an outlier in that. Not in terms of the education of the population overall, but the number of 18-year-olds going, and the gap that's been left at level 4 and 5, which I did a degree apprenticeship, right? I'm the only degree apprentice in the House of Commons, and myself and Robert Halfon have been consistently, enamoured with this route for a long time, and his ladders of opportunity has been something he'd be delighted to hear you to say as well. But the reality is, when I did it, you did a level 2, then you did a level 4, then you went and did a level 6. So actually the routes then were quite different. The arbitrary targets, we need 100% of young people to get great opportunities, and we need 100% of our, this idea that talent's everywhere and opportunity isn't is absolutely right. If you grew up in Knowsley like I did, you lived that, you saw that, you know that. And there's a lot of people who left school without, however, the 4 or 5 GCSEs, who could do so much more if they had the opportunities that other people have had, and if they had them at some point in their life. Half of the apprenticeships that are accessed are actually accessed via adults who are trying to get that second chance. So it's hard to have an arbitrary target, but it's good to have a whole load of other routes that will be accessible, that are not with no rungs missing on the ladder, to be able to access them wherever you are in our education system and wherever you want to go in terms of your opportunities.
Splendid, thank you. Graham, did you have any thoughts?
I do, thank you. Yeah, I always worry a little bit when people ask whether too many people are going to university. And I think the majority of people in this room have probably experienced university, or at least had higher education. And a predecessor of mine once said that what people usually mean is there are too many other people going to university. And we've got potentially in the future 10 plus careers in a lifetime, I think they're saying. 65% of students currently will be employed in jobs that don't yet exist. And as I said in my introduction, that if you look at the World Economic Forum categorizing the sort of skills that we're going to need, 4 broad categories of problem solving, self-management, working with people, and also technology use and development. And that fits into analytical thinking, innovation, active learning, complex problem solving, critical thinking, analysis, creativity, etc. All things that are delivered through university education. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to go to university, but picking up on the Secretary of State's point, we have a very large number of mature students. We have them coming back to university because they are upskilling, because we need to take on different careers as we go through that lifetime. And degree apprenticeships is obviously a very, very useful way of enabling us to upskill and reskill that population group, or indeed students coming from non-traditional backgrounds. So I think that, and I think the statistic is that we need 11 million more graduates by 2035. So I think that we shouldn't be asking whether we have too many people going to university, but making sure that we're providing the right opportunities for people to do what they want to do at whatever level. And that goes back, I guess, to that ladders of opportunity, so you can get in and get on and get off the educational process where it suits you best. But certainly, no, it won't surprise you, I believe that we will need more people to go to university and to modern universities in the future.
Splendid. And Naomi and John, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so I agree with that. I think what's important is that whatever route people are taking, that they are getting and getting the opportunity to develop the skills that they'll need, particularly for the world of work. So research and analysis that we've partners have undertaken as part of the Skills Imperative 2035 project that's looking at skills that will be in demand in the economy, shows that kind of specialist skills and knowledge will continue to be important, but there's a kind of core set of transferable essential employment skills that will be in greatest demand in the labour market. So that's things like communication, collaboration, problem-solving skills, creative thinking, and so I think what's really important is that the kind of curriculums enable people to develop those skills, but also that people have the opportunities to kind of gain work experience, that kind of hands-on experiential kind of learning opportunities that also allow them to develop those skills. And I think that's where universities' collaboration with employers is so important.
Very good, thank you, Neil.
I'm going to dodge the question slightly. Say actually the very last people that should be answering that question are politicians and government. And I always worry when government and politicians start saying what skills are needed, what knowledge is needed, and things like that, and sort of having a view and a firm view. My personal view is that government's role in this is to enable and empower people and ensure quality. So that's why I'm so excited about the lifelong loan entitlement, and it sounds very niche and very kind of technical, but the reason why it's so important is that it gives individuals the ability to do the learning and the training that they want, how they want it in bite size or as a full qualification at the pace they want to do it. So it empowers the individual to make the choices that's right for them. And the skills tax credits that I spoke about has the exact same effect with employers. It empowers them. So if they do the right thing and invest in their people, they are then rewarded for doing it. So really, that's, for me, that's what government should be doing, empowering the individual, empowering employers. And then the other side of it is just ensuring quality. Now, previous times when this has been attempted, you can go back to individual learner accounts under Labour in the early 2000s, where you just had a Wild West. So you just empowered everybody, but they then went and started doing...
Oh, sorry.
There's a lot of electricals up here, so hopefully we're okay. Okay. It empowered people, but they didn't have the quality measures in place. So you saw a lot of money, a lot of taxpayers' money being used in a way that just didn't benefit the economy. So you have to have that empowerment that I spoke about, but then government has to come in and say, like, we are going to kite mark whatever you want to do and make sure the content that people are getting is high quality, so people don't get missold a qualification, do it, and then suddenly find themselves unemployable but having wasted a lot of time.
Yes, thank you very much, John. Sorry, I apologise, I managed to spill my cup of tea up here. Thank you very much, Abigail. We are a well-oiled machine at Conho. But anyway, I think I've whittled on long enough and been particularly self-indulgent today. So I would like to turn it open to the audience. We'll take sort of two questions at once. And if there's a particular speaker you would like to answer your question, do let us know. But I think we'll start off with the lady at the back here and the gentleman here at the... Have we only got the one microphone? Okay, sorry. We'll start off with the lady at the back then.
Thank you very much. My youngest is choosing her GCSEs, and it feels to me that conversations about careers and higher education, certainly with my older two, those conversations don't start to sixth form. Are we doing enough to make this information accessible, to show the different routes, to take the pressure off, to say it's okay, keep your options broad, there's plenty of time? Are we doing enough to engage with that age group?
Secretary of State? That seems prerogative.
I mean, the answer's in the question, no. If you're not, you're never doing enough. When I became an MP, which was only 6 years ago, it actually blew my mind that we'd had to legislate to force schools to allow people to come in to talk about careers and alternative routes other than university. We didn't legislate just once, we legislated twice to make it stronger because it wasn't working. That blows my mind. It still blows my mind. I think there has been a big shift. Now, the Careers and Enterprise Company is what we set up and funded to help schools, particularly schools that perhaps don't have a lot of businesses nearby or a lot of parents that are involved in working in those organisations, etc., to enable to create those opportunities for young people to be able to talk about careers with a broad group of people, to be able to visit places, to be able to get speakers in, to be able to go on work experience. The T-levels, of course, have a 9-week work experience project. I have fought everybody to make sure that that is face-to-face, because there's been a lot of push to try and make it more virtual. And if you talk to the young people, they look at you with horror and say, you're joking, I spend all my time, on a virtual environment. I want to pass through that sliding door. I want to feel the workplace. I want to talk to people, etc. So we do need to do more of that. I think we have a lot of the things in place, and I think there's a lot of desire about young people. It always strikes me when talking to young people. First of all, they think they're making binary choices. They're not. I mean, as we've just said, there'll be many, I don't know about 10 careers, but there'll certainly be many careers, and they will change. I was an MP age 49, right? I never even thought of it till I was 46. There'll be lots of different things that people will do, all the way throughout their life. And that is just how, so they think of it as quite binary. And the other thing, it's almost like they feel like it's a date with destiny. They've done the A's, they've done the A stars, they've done as much as they can, and it's all leading to this date with destiny. And actually, I keep saying to them, just start. It'll be fine. Just start. Businesses are there. They will. They really need you. They really want you. They want you to succeed more than anyone has ever wanted you to succeed. And I often say, and I say this in the DFE, the DFE gave me a Knowsley Comprehensive School education. Businesses gave me everything else. So there is a role for everybody to play here, and at different stages, and for the whole. But the work experience side of it, we need to make it more normal, and we need to, this date with destiny kind of thing that it's built up is creating a lot of anxiety as well. So they just need to know that everybody is waiting for them and will help them along the way, but they need to get that feeling probably a little bit earlier. So hopefully the Careers and Enterprise Company and all the work they're doing will offer those opportunities to younger people. And we've started in primaries as well now, just recently.
Very good. Is there anything else any of the other panellists would like to add on that, or should I move on to another question?
I'll just say one thing, if I may. I mean, I agree with the Secretary of State there, but yes, obviously more can be done. But I do think it's worth noting that universities are already reaching out and working in collaboration with further education colleges and with schools. Lots of initiatives around even providing information and around higher education in primary schools. And coincidentally, this morning, we've got the Chief Executive in the front row here of a multi-academy trust that we as a university sponsor. And it is coincident, I didn't know Jonathan was coming. And in that trust, you've got primary schools and you've got secondary schools and you've got the university and business sponsors. So that model is really important in terms of being able to provide the necessary information for younger people to make the decisions and choices. But I completely agree that they can keep those choices quite widely open, and there are opportunities. And my advice on a personal level is always do something you're going to enjoy.
Splendid, thank you. Another question then. The gentleman to my right. Well, sorry.
My name is Martin Prendergast. I'm from RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and my question is about the creative industries. So the creative industry is a priority sector in the Chancellor's industrial strategy. There's a huge shortage of technical skills. RADA, 50% of students RADA have technical vocational training. So we're doing our bit, and actually we have a youth company with a technical cohort so that we're getting in younger people, particularly from diverse backgrounds, so that we're addressing the shortage and also diversity within the sector as well. But there is a huge skills shortage. What more can be done to address this skills shortage, and what's the role of universities in that? Or do we think that starts earlier in secondary school, secondary education?
Secretary of State, I saw you nodding along there. So is there something you would like to say?
Well, first of all, the creative industries is not only one of our biggest exports, but it's also something we're sort of really good at, highly differentiated, and everybody wants to be us, basically. So I think we've just got such a DNA actually to build on in our creative industries. Everybody wants to go into the creative industry. So when I first had this conversation with some people from the industry, and some very famous people from the industry, and they were saying we can't find the skills, I said, you've got to be kidding. Everybody I know would love to go into that industry, and everyone sees it as a closed shop, a closed industry. How do you get into it? You've got to be, super brilliant at something, or you don't get into it. And all the supporting roles, they haven't, people don't even know they exist, right? Everyone just thinks of the actors or the singers or the performing artists. But it's all the rest of it, which is really absolutely key and can provide brilliant careers. So we've set up a number of things. So I think that things like the Brit Schools, the London Skills Academy, we've now just announced a Brit School for the North. And we just really need to identify how we open up the opportunities into that industry. Apprenticeships, they had virtually none because of the way that the industry is structured around employment and it being employed by film or production by production. So we've been working to try and overcome that with the Screen Academy and others as well. So we're very keen to figure out how all of this stuff we're doing we can make work for all of those routes into the creative industry. And I think the creative industry is quite a fragmented industry as well, so that's probably made it, you know, less of a central point to start to work to be able to overcome these. But there's a lot of focus now, and that's why one of the reasons why I didn't hesitate to sign off the Brit School for the North, because I think it's just amazing that all those kids in the North will now have the same opportunities without having to travel to be able to get into this industry, which includes a lot of like the camera skills and the production skills. And one last thing, I'm very proud because as you can imagine, I bang on about apprenticeships everywhere I go. So where I'm the MP for Chichester, we have Chichester Festival Theatre, and we have the very first theatre production director apprenticeship at Chichester Festival Theatre. There is nothing that this apprenticeship system cannot solve the problems for.
Very good news. Would any of the rest of the panel like to contribute on that? John?
Okay. I hope there's nobody from the Treasury here and stuff, because I realise the stuff I'm saying is very expensive. But I'm going to add. I'm going to add to it. Is the advantage of being a parliamentary candidate rather than MP is that you can just you can just champion and campaign for things. But I would add to the skills tax credits that I spoke about earlier, because the flaw of skills tax credits is actually they only really work with big business. Big business only really thinks in the kind of long term and how tax incentives and stuff like that work. And the creative industries is obviously an industry not entirely of SMEs and micro, but it is dominated by it largely, as the Secretary of State was saying. And therefore skills tax credits probably wouldn't advantage except for really big businesses. So the thing that I think has been shown to work is the Kickstart programme. During the pandemic, and what the Kickstart programme did for SMEs is that the problem with big business is making the sums add up at the end of the financial year, whereas really for SMEs it's about cash flow. What Kickstart did is give SMEs £3,000 to take on an apprentice, no strings attached, just sort of a golden hello, and that created 90,000 apprenticeships. And the vast majority of them were young people in the smaller businesses. So if I was going to be carry on being very expensive, I would have the repertoire of interventions I would have is skills tax credits for big employers, golden hellos for small employers, because by having those two together, you are just creating this enormous kind of incentive for business just to invest in people.
Splendid, thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. The lady on the end here.
Thank you very much. My name's Sandy Rees-Jones, and I'm currently president of the Chartered Institute of Building. And we're something like 225,000 people short in our industry. The CIOB is an awarding body and is totally committed to making entry to professionalism at all sorts of levels. One of the big problems we have is the fact that the industry currently pays 2 levies for apprenticeships. And we would be very interested in talking more on how this can be rationalised and made more accessible and more effective. I'd also like to pick up the comment made by my fellow delegate here on how you make more obvious career routes. I mean, I had absolute rubbish career advice, and I, like many other people, found myself in the construction industry by accident. It would be very nice to find some way of introducing at GCSE level the sort of practical courses in the built environment so that young people at the age of 15 and 16 can see the beginning of a route. And I believe it's being trialled in Wales. Are there some views on how we could review GCSEs? And T-levels actually are a big challenge for many schools, I know, in terms of cost. So can we combine the educational system linked in with the universities so they can see that route, that ladder, Secretary of State, you were mentioning about with missing rings, but so you can see that actually...
Sorry, Madam, we are slightly stuffed for time. So, Secretary of State, if you could take the sort of first part of that, and Naomi, I think on the second element about sort of popularising and making sure that people know the opportunities out there, if you could respond on that.
Okay, so just 2 things. The 2 levies, the second one's the CITB, which the industry gets to vote on and decides whether it wants or not, so it's up to the industry. In terms of the GCSEs and some of the more vocational GCSEs, we actually did reform them by getting rid of most of them. They were very poor quality. They were something that didn't really lead to anywhere. So we worked with industry to design what it, because they were not designed in it with industry at all. So that was part of the reforms that we made, and got rid of some of the GCSEs that were not providing any value to the individual and were not linked up to employers at all. T-levels have been designed with employers. They are large courses. They are larger than 3A levels, and they are funded more than the 3A levels as well. So they're funded by the hours. But of course, they're a new qualification.
Splendid. And Naomi?
Yeah, I think this point kind of joins up a lot of the questions here about making kind of more obvious routes and careers advice. And I'd say start earlier than secondary school. I think you need to look at kind of primary school, and it would look, you know, different. But how do you ensure that all young people have role models and have a sense of the kind of opportunities available? Clearly we need to ensure that we're continuing to create more routes for young people, and that diversity of routes, and that links to kind of T-levels, institutes of technology, higher technical qualifications too. But I would say, I think particularly in relation to the kind of built environment and construction, I think there's something around the green economy here, and thinking about the fact that lots of young people are really quite inspired by the idea of working in a job or career that contributes to the transition to net zero. And the work we've done with World Skills UK shows that whilst young people are inspired by that kind of idea, lots of them have really no idea what the careers options and training options look like in that space, particularly young women. So I do think we absolutely need to focus on how we improve young people's awareness of the career options and training opportunities in relation to the green economy too.
Very good, and very important as long as the net zero target remains.
We are absolutely committed to the net zero. In fact, I had the first International Green Skills Conference with Imperial College this week, which we hosted.
Very good. I'm conscious that various panellists have to rush off to other events. So to just summarise, I think, in the immortal words of New Labour circa 2001, on apprenticeships, on reforming our universities, on improving the standards of the courses available, there has been much done, and it seems there is also much still to do. But I would like to say thank you very much to the Secretary of State and all of our panellists for giving up their time today, and if we could have a hand for them.
Thank you.
That's very kind of you. Thank you all for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.